over to you, Fabrice, to introduce the topic.
Thank you. So what we've established in the last meetup, and is worth reminding now, is that all our efforts to transform organizations and improve organization makes no sense if it doesn't contribute to creating more value and more value for the customers. Value is not always financial. It can come from, it can have different forms. It's anything that meets and exceeds the expectations of the user, the customer, the citizen, whoever the beneficiary of your organization is, and in whatever form your organization provides, whether it's product, services, or something else.
And sometimes it's an interesting question to ask: what's the value? Where is the value created? And it's indeed thinking about value in terms of who is the end beneficiary and aligning the whole thing to this is not trivial in many organizations.
But in my experience, it's always worth thinking about it more, because organization leaders know, of course, have some kind of intuitive feeling of what the value could be, of what the value is, but thinking about it much more is key and strategic. And Philippe will mention that later in the talk, but I think one of the things I've heard so many leaders and in large organizations say is, my IT is agile, but the organization is not agile. And I think that's clearly, you can connect it to this idea that if your agility is not contributing to the value from in the whole end-to-end process, and then of course it's not going to feel agile overall.
And you probably don't have a visibility of the end-to-end process, and people will work for stakeholders instead of customers. So indeed, having a perspective of where is the value, who are the beneficiaries is very important, and understanding the whole chain that supports that. So if we take some examples here, consultancy
This is
a topic you know very well.
Yeah, I can talk about that one, but so do you. So typically what is interesting, and so yes, and then when you think about organizations, you really always have these kind of two dimensions that you're juggling with. One is functional dimension, basically the expertise, which is quite important in terms of management, because it's better when the manager has the same kind of competences as the people they're managing. And then there's the other dimension, which is really how to align ourselves towards customers. And in consultancies, often one way to organize around customers is to organize around industries and sectors. And so you will see that most consultancies will have practices that are industry specific, so that at least you have these like sub organizations that are aligned to a similar type of customer. And we can find that also in product organization, automotive, for example, where the organization will be aligned on different types of products. The example that Philippe put here is quite nice, aligning on sports cars, SUVs, EVs, which have different needs, different challenges, technical challenges, engineering challenges, and that's how you organize how you sub-organize your organization.
And here the product represents the client and the client persona that would buy the product quite often. But it's also interesting that in automotive we got the idea of platform. We talk a lot about platform in software, but automotive also has platforms. And how do they organize around platform? How do they create modularity and flexibility around them is super interesting. Super interesting, and not that far away from the concepts of DevOps and platform and software. Actually, we got a lot to learn from them on that. So how do we define that value alignment? And in my experience, and I've seen a number of approaches trying to leverage value stream mapping, because when we think about value stream, value stream mapping by name tends to appear as potentially the answer. And although I would say value stream mapping is very useful, extremely useful to look at optimizing the flow of a process, the flow of the end-to-end, once you have identified the end-to-end. But it's a bit too granular to go and identifying the end-to-end. Because it doesn't give you a view of the whole system in one picture. It tends to really get very granular very quickly. And it's very difficult. It's not impossible, but quite difficult to go and determine value streams from value stream mapping. So very useful, but not necessarily completely suitable for this exercise. Some of you would say, what about team topologies? And well, team topologies, and certainly, and keep following because we'll talk about team topologies. And they certainly create alignments, have some techniques around the heuristics and so on of the organization. But they also have the user mapping technique, which is derived from Wardley mapping. So they use those techniques as well in team topologies. So completely compatible, completely fit for purpose with what we're doing, and you will see how we connect the two in a minute. So what about using Wardley Maps for this? And Wardley Maps give you that sense of how the organization aligns. The very interesting thing about Wardley Map is they start from the user. So when we say about aligning to the end beneficiary, that's the starting point of any map. And then when we talk about the next step of a map is about the needs. So what is the value? The customer needs is generally the value. And if you have multiple users, and I've been working with businesses who have some end customers, so consumers, as well as B2B customers. So let's say a franchise network, for instance, the people operating the franchise or a customer of the main brand in a different way, in a B2B way, compared to the consumers of the product of that brand. And therefore, you need to look at different type of users and do your maps for those different needs they may have, and then look at how it reconciles into a joined up organization. So let's give it a try. But first, let's explain what a Wardley map is, and let's also review the problems with a case study. So, and just out of interest, and I know most of you are not on camera, and if you don't want to be, that's perfectly fine, especially as we're recording the session. But do you want to give us a bit of a thumbs up for those that actually understand and know Wardley maps, or some, I don't know, some other icons for those that don't? Okay. So quite a few are familiar, so you're welcome to correct me if I say something wrong. But for those that are less familiar, I'm giving you a very quick crash course about what a Wardley map is. And the idea is to put the business landscape on a canvas, and a canvas where the positions matter. And what Simon Wardley, the originator of Wardley Maps, explains is that the difference between a map and a diagram, and many things we talk about, a mind map, let's say, a mind map, the positions don't matter. So it's not really a map. Whereas on the Wardley map, the position you have on the canvas does matter. Space has a meaning. And the idea is we have, towards the top, and the vertical space is less relevant. Towards the top is basically what is more visible to the customer, what they interact with, what is going to create and deliver the value. And towards the bottom is what is less visible, what is supporting what is visible, essentially. And then we have positions on the horizontal axis that are Genesis, custom built, product rental, and commodity. And I'll explain in a second with some example what that means. And then we create essentially a map of where things are at. So you look at the user, you look at their needs, which ones are more emergent, which ones are more established and taken for granted, And then we create a value chain of elements that contribute to supporting those user needs. And that gives us a map. Um, and as I was saying, the visibility is organized, and it's not fundamental, but it helps reading a map. And sometimes, on certain maps, the same item would be high up in the visibility or be further down, depending the role they play onto that map. And the maturity matters because movement matters. Strategy is as much about where the position is as where you need to move things. And the beauty of Wardley Map is that it connects the value chains to their outcome, and it connects basically the capabilities to the outcome you're realizing. If you want better outcomes, sometimes you need to change your capability. So that means it connects the outside in. So what are the outcomes of the strategy, what the ambition of the organization, what you want to realize, to actually your capability, your inside out capabilities. And you can play on both. And that's probably the superiority of Wardley Maps to many other strategic frameworks that struggle to connect those two very well. So if we think about the horizontal axis, which is the most important, the genesis is the space where you invent something new, you're experimenting. It's the space of experimentation there. It's a space where you don't necessarily have that many customers at that point. And then your first inertia is finding the customers. And typically what you would say is you make what you sell. So the customer will have a say very much into the shape of the product, into its capabilities, into all the things you're going to deliver. And you almost custom make them for the customer. And as things evolve, you may consolidate them as a product where you start selling what you make. So it's less custom, it's more repeatable. You have some feature iterations at that point, but actually you're offering something that is somewhat standardized into the market. And there's a big inertia to go from a company that is basically making what you sell to a company that sells what you make. And the consultancy is trying to create accelerators, for instance. We recognize that challenge about being a product company suddenly. And of course, during that journey, you can jump the queue. So you don't necessarily need to have a linear progress through that. You can scan weak signals and decide to be a fast follower of some things when you see that momentum is taking in the market on some things. But that will test your agility. Can you react fast? Can you read the market well? The more you're waiting, the more you need to be able to be reacting with a lot of agility. And of course, as all those things get grown on technology and so on, if you don't have the journey of learning technology and having the people that understand those new technologies and so on, the more you wait, the less you're able to react typically. So that gives you more inertia to jump the queue, in a sense. So interesting to see those as patterns on the map because it helps you define your potential to do new things. And then, of course, the last point of a Wardley map is when things need to move into platform utility. This is where the big business is. This is where the scaling happens. And it's something to have a product. It's quite another one to have a platform. And everybody would love to have a platform and have so many people on that. But it means sometimes that you relinquish that first contact with the customer to actually underpin with some foundations the industry. And shifting to a platform is also a big step that has inertia in many businesses. And when you do that, the dynamics of as some things mature, some new order items emerge. So how can you have new curves? So start new diffusion curves effectively, new products, new ideas, new concepts that leverage the foundation that already exists in the industry. So, and the Wardley Maps balance basically those two elements permanently. So that's a real quick crash course. I hope you get the gist of them. There's plenty more, and I'm looking to do some training around those at some point soon as well. So there's plenty more to learn and plenty more time to take over Wardley Maps. But I recommend you research that a little bit more if you're interested. And for this, we're going to take the example of a holiday operator. Just working the maps through an example will probably speak to you fairly simply, and we kept things simple today. So first, the challenge. As a holiday operator, they were organized, and that's taking some real case of the industry and adapting them as a case study. It's actually not unusual type problems. So as a business, they had brands and they were omni-channel, or they are, and and they had an IT. So they had a business side and an IT side. And the IT typically had the products. And interestingly, in many organizations, you tend to have the business on one side with some form of product manager or business ownership in there, and you have product ownership also on the IT side. And then we had delivery, we had Scrum Masters, we had architecture, we had testing in there. And of course, when you organize separating business and tech, the business side is trying to create the flow of answering customer demand or customer needs. And the tech is responding. So automatically you got to have projects. And we got basically the resourcing, all those things about organizing project that gets challenged. What happens with that is automatically the whole tech is positioned into a delivery role. Not so much a value creation role, the value is delivering a project. And often on top of that, and often in banks, for instance, you have a very big change function that actually controls those projects and ensures in a way the value delivery. So, and to what Fabrice was saying earlier, my tech is agile, my business isn't. And it's quite often that we see a tech position as delivery works in an agile way, responds faster, but the business hasn't necessarily moved to be an agile one. So first question, and we mark a little pause here for questions if you have, but also prompting those questions. Do you recognize this type of situation in your business at present? And you can come on audio, or you can actually share your thoughts in the chat with regard to that state of play. And Fabrice, since you told us that you heard that, is that also a situation you see quite often with your clients at Theodo or the people you talk to as a result of the book?
It's been, I mean, publishing the book has been, of course, the opportunity to have a lot of conversation around these topics with people at very high level. And it's interesting how indeed, like the words I've heard used again multiple times has been my IT is agile, which often means, there's been a safe deployment that's been successful. So successful in the sense that they probably went from a 1 year cycle to one, quarterly cycle. But indeed, really just inside the IT. And now so the way they're saying that's not very agile is by saying my IT is agile, but the business is not. So that's I've heard it, at least I've heard it in one bank, I've heard it at one retailer, and I have a few more examples that I don't have in mind right now. And I think it's very, very interesting because indeed, when people criticize SAFe, I guess that's what the fundamental misconception is between the two sides. One side is saying, I'm really improved my delivery. And one side is saying, but that's not what agility is about.
So some people are echoing this in the comment. We inspecting and adapted the delivery and nothing else. Not at present, never met a customer. Thank you for sharing. And indeed, that's quite a challenge. And the idea of digital transformation, and often I like being controversial. I tend to say that we haven't started yet in many organizations. We deliver technology, but integrating the business with the technology is where digital leadership and digital transformation should be at. So it's merging business and tech together, and many organizations are quite far from that. So another comment, it sounds very familiar with the change initiatives I'm leading. Tech is good to go for agile business and leadership lacking agility. It's so often the business often resisted integration, however. Another comment, I've seen a company where the business hated IT, see it as a cost center and complain about slow delivery, but they don't invest in the IT team. A lot of the delivery is outsourced, especially in the front end. I think they will become more of a product company, but these ideas are still just spreading. The mindset of leaders where they believe the teams need to change is where the tech is agile, but not business starts. Business agility has always struck me as a strange term. So interesting. Thank you for your comments. So it shows that we're not talking in a vacuum here. Those are real problems people are experiencing, and probably the next steps for many progressing many changes. So let's carry on and see how Wardley Maps may help us see the business differently and approach that challenge differently. So remember, it's a holiday operator. Now we're going to talk about what do we focus on. So the customer, they want to buy a holiday. And in buying a holiday, typically they go on an e-commerce e-commerce website of some sort. And generally you buy a package. And the package will have some activity options. And that relies on a catalog, certainly underpinned by a content management system that has all the assets, the brochures, the pictures, and so on, and probably a product information management system as well. So typical e-commerce, we sell a holiday here, and the customer wants to buy that. Nothing really that technology advanced with that. We have a lot of products supporting that sort of things, a lot of technology doing that. Now let's look at the next thing, preparing the holiday. And what's interesting in that business is if the package people buy initially is too complicated, it turns people off. So you're better off buying something simple, but then as it will take probably 3 to 6 months before the people go on their holiday, that's the time where you have a greater share of wallet to actually exploit, and where the customer has more time to get excited about their holiday. So rather than front loading all this at the start, make it simple for people to buy and then prepare the holiday where you can have people being excited with my holiday page and those things, being able to upsell things, being able to prepare their holiday by scheduling activities and having access to the activity calendar and so on. So seeing the activity options and having access to scheduling things. And then it's about enjoying their digital holiday in a way. Many of us will probably want to go away from a computer and away from a mobile phone where we go on holiday, but it can also support your better experience. So if you have that device in your hand, you can actually never miss the activities you wanted, have your diary, coordinate all those things, and help enjoy your holiday, essentially doing your check-ins and all those things are already preloaded and signposting you and allowing a trouble-free sort of enjoyment of your activities. So that's a simple map. That is very, very simple map here. And you can see how certain things are more sort of industrialized. There's products to do that. They're buying a product, and then it becomes more custom. How they want to customize their holiday is more in the custom build level, and how they enjoy their holiday. It's something that is a little bit more novel as well. And based on that, you can look at actually there is a chain of things that stand together in the same value chain, but are not really shared by others. And then there's another chain of things here where others may have a dependency on, but actually it's mostly self-contained. And again, on the enjoyment of the holiday, there's a number of things that you could have together. And underneath, some elements of shared, and you could question, does that belong into a value stream of the prepare the holiday, which seems to be quite central here in terms of systems, or is that something that should be shared in terms of being a platform for the business? And of course, being a platform, it implies that you decouple, it implies you modularize, it implies that you expose services, all those sort of things. So here, when we were discussing about the business side and the tech side, here we have a value chain that doesn't make a difference of business and tech. It just merges them to the value that those value chains bring to a customer. Quick pause. Does that make sense? And does that allow you to see basically this business, but if you were applying that to your business, does that visualization help you see a business differently? What are your thoughts? And starting with Fabrice, what do you see as a potential of this? And please type in the chat, or if you want to see speak in audio, please raise your hand, and we'll have you next. Fabrice, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and while I'm sharing my thoughts, Simon is asking for the previous slide, so it's a good point. So yeah, my thought. I mean, the reason I was so excited about this meetup is I find this. I'm having been on a lean journey for 12 years now. I really enjoyed the power of visual management, and therefore, there's this very natural idea of thinking, okay, I should actually visualize my value chain, and I should make sure that it's connected to the customer, etc. But the idea of Wardley mapping is then you're adding this second dimension, which is actually the dynamism of innovation. And having talked to a few IT leaders who use Wardley mapping, there's always been the consensus is this makes me so much smarter because I can not only think about my organization, but I can also think about my strategy at the same time. And so that's why I really like, in a sense, you could say all we're adding is just one dimension. But yeah, I think it's a really, really useful dimension. And that's why I also loved your example, because I think it's quite practical. And so have we done that internally? We've actually never used Wardley mapping internally for that kind of exercise. So we never thought about adding the dynamic dimension. We use Wardley mapping much more to think about innovation. And your example has really inspired me on that.
Thank you. Thank you. We got a question from Anne. What a good question to get from the outer visible layer into the next more visible node. I'm not sure I completely understand it. Anne, do you want to say it on audio? Oh, I'm not sure Anne is here. So next question from Simon. What do the colored shape represent? They don't represent anything at this stage. They do represent that I've used those colors to basically say, look, it looks like those nodes belong together potentially. And when they are placed together, they can
Teasing,
actually
teasing.
support the same thing, the value to the customer that is at the top end of the map. And when they overlap, those are choices. Is it a shared service or is it something that belongs within a value stream?
Just a question about, sorry, I'm quite new to this. I'm trying to understand it. So saying the device app would be something that would be custom built because it fits in that section, whereas the e-commerce site you buy the holiday on might be a product. Am I getting that right?
Potentially. I mean, there would be more things that supports those things. The device app, for instance, could be custom developed, or we could look to use some patterns and non-frameworks for that as well that will underpin the custom app more down the chain, if you want. That's a simple map here. I'm not trying to do a very detailed map for this example. Otherwise, people would be lost. But what to read more in this map is there is a level of independence between the different value realization to a customer. There is a level of independence where you could bring teams together for those. And you could look to align business and technology for those. And then you may have some shared technology lower down the chains where you have some choices to make. Does that make sense? I think it was Simon asking, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So, Anne, how do you identify the nodes? The nodes is, it's a very simple, it's what you put on the map. The nodes are called components on the map, and that can be anything. It can be a practice, it can be sometimes a technique, it can be a team, it can be doing some specific purposeful tasks, it can be as well a technology. So the nodes, it's very kind of open what it is. What's important, however, is that the people doing a map will create their own language when they do the map. And the nodes, you put the nodes on the map with things that people understand. And sometimes it's a bit harder when people come, after the facts without having been through the language that got on the map and try and understand the map. So it's very flexible what the nodes are. And then you try and cleanse your map so that it makes sense. I hope that answers your question. E.g., Thomas, at V model, you move down by asking how and by why. What are the navigating questions for these maps? Not necessarily navigating questions. It's the questions are typically, you start with sort of the why. What is the purpose for what we do? It's value to the customer. Okay, so you start with that. And then you tend to ask what supports that, and what supports that, and what supports that. And that's where you create those strategic nodes. Okay, I hope that. So let's move on. And now progressing to team topologies. And for those that know team topologies, you have a concept of 4 concepts of team. One is the streamlined teams, which marry very well with the idea of a value stream. You have the enabling teams, which help basically the streamlined team typically, or other teams. You have the platform groupings, which typically sort of are underpinning things and tend to have interfaces. So they're not directly in the flow of value, but they support it through services. And we talk often about removing the cognitive load of doing certain things that are common. And they accelerate basically the streamlined team for that. And then I call them core components here, but I think team topologies calls them complicated subsystems. So those tend to be sometimes legacy systems or key systems in organizations that you have to use and they're not going to change. But those are we call them core components here. So if we think about moving those concepts of team topologies onto a map, what we got is the value stream of buying a holiday, which will contain basically the e-commerce packages and so on. And that's probably more to the product end of a map, let's say. And the value stream of preparing the holiday, which has a potential to stretch a bit more, and enjoying the holiday, that will be a little bit more on the custom side probably. And those are features, those things will support based on the map we done before. And then looking at it next, we would have the core capabilities, and probably the catalog, the PIM, the CMS would be very suitable to be a platform, because of course, a main value stream will use them, but probably all of them will use them at the end of the day. And then we have the core components, the complicated system that or legacy system that exist, and legacy, I don't mean that by bad legacy. They are systems, historic systems, and key systems of the business that we used to use. And you can see that some systems like core booking and logistics are mostly used by one value stream. And payment, for instance, here would be used by all of them. So in the idea of how do you use them, how do you distribute them, at the starting point here, the relationships between things, and you can organize the support. So if you wanted to create flow without doing so much change at the moment, you could actually say in the core booking platform, how do we synchronize that stream more with the value stream by holiday? The payment, maybe you would say, how do we organize teams in the payment team that will face to each of those value streams to have a better response time? So you could already prepare to organize for better flow that way. And the central team, or probably the ones you think about as settlers. So they support the current work, they support the current capability, and they enable new features. So they basically create feature iteration on the existing service they provide of buy holiday, prepare holiday, enjoy holiday. And equally, as teams, they should also drive the emergence, drive the continuous improvement. So in the lean term, do that. So that's really the idea of settlers in Wardley Maps. That's what they do. You take something that is there and you make it work better, you grow it and so on, you nurture it. And there's also this concept of simplifying. In Wardley Maps, it's called town planners or town planning. The idea is how do we simplify the end process? How do we industrialize those? And sometimes you shift things into a platform. Sometimes you operate it better. Sometimes you do other things. And here the idea was some of them could integrate into the value stream, and we could extend the value stream, packaging all the end-to-end into the same thing. And the payment is a prime candidate to go into a platform. So suddenly here we're looking at not just optimizing processes to work with those, but optimizing the business as a whole. Because we organize those things to be quicker and more connected to add value. And yeah, that's a quick pause, but we don't really have the time. So I'm going to carry on. The other question is, how do we organize for innovation and breakthrough innovation? So I was talking about new features, and the idea of new features, of course, is some innovation, but generally it's an innovation contained in the product. And if we think breakthrough innovation, we think more about the genesis end. How do we invent something new, something that doesn't just extend from the existing, but is genuinely groundbreaking? And here, it's interesting to think about it as how do we have an unarticulated disruptive idea, and how do we support it? And the idea of innovation, and I quote Dave Snowden on this, that complex adaptive systems scale by decomposition and recombination. The idea of innovation often is, how can we work on applied innovation, that it uses the elements of the business and creates something new with minimal, new things to invest in. So how can we exact innovation from most of the things we already have? And if we apply this idea on a map, and an answer we had in this case is, how do we have a roaming team of pioneers where their job is, there's no brief for them. They write their own brief every day. And they look at leveraging things that exist already in the other teams to create more breakthrough innovation. How can we create something that the competition doesn't do, that we didn't imagine before? And when they do that, it can flow straight away into the existing value stream, or maybe what gets recombined creates a value stream of its own. So the idea was to stimulate innovation that way. And that idea is also compatible with a number of other thinking, like the three horizons, and the thinking of Geoffrey Moore around the innovation zone, the transformation zone, and performance zone of the book, Zone to Win. And in this case, on the map, the transformation zone and performance zone would overlap a little bit. So, quick conclusion, and then let's go back to this map with some questions if you have. So the Wardley Maps can help you with organization design. They orient the value chain and help identifying value streams to the value of to the customers. Business, I found, I rarely have a view of end-to-end value chains, and that's really a problem in modern strategy, that they don't. Platform exists where value chains meet, and those are always choices you make. There's no perfect formula. They allow the maps allow genuine focus on flow of value, because you start from the customer needs, and there is this, as Fabrice was explaining, this dynamism with the PST model, the three horizons Zone to Win, where you see how innovation as a cycle of progress into industrialization. And everything has this. So if you want to scale innovation, industrialization is very important, but equally you need to make the space and the affordance for innovation, and you need to design your system that the innovation can emerge. So questions to you, and as we are close to the time, question is that awakening some ideas of seeing your business differently? And as always, Fabrice, the first is for you.
What I liked when I saw that slide, and of course, I got a preview before this today. What I liked is, and that kind of resonates with one of the questions that Fortune did in the chat, which is, it helps you see, typically here you see, the lack of a team working on disruptive innovation and breakthrough innovation. So I think it's very interesting in that sense. It helps you probably also visualize better what, in an organization that starts having like loads of IT, the question is often which ones do you invest in, which ones do we put in run mode. Ideally, you'd want nothing to be in run mode, but some things end up there. Here again, you can see it. You're like, yeah, okay, we're in the commodity sector. Okay, fine. It makes sense. This is run. Here, oh wow, we're definitely not investing enough. It's clearly more in the early transformation zone. We should be probably having one or two more people in the team. I think that's that's what really inspires the kind of inspiration I see when I see that.
Thank you. And there are maps as well that explains, more towards the right is probably where some things like Six Sigma can start making sense, certainly a lot of lean, and more towards the center is iteration, so it's agile, it's lean, and more towards the left, For innovation, it's things like agile and lean startup. So those things where you experiment a lot and you work in complexity, and where you time box things, you have no idea where you're going, no idea of how long it will take. Whereas on the right side, you can start looking at takt time, excellence, repeatability, all those sort of things.
Mm. I'm gonna put my lean hat, but I'd say in lean thinking, you'd say value analysis is, all the right side, and value engineering is the left side. So
Yeah. And no, lean startup, lean product development is completely on the left side as well. So lean has a lot to offer here. So one comment, it helps visualize and distinguish the process flow. It's not, and I wanted to react on this comment, and also about innovation. Maps are not about process. They're about connecting basically the organization to its strategy and its value. If you approach map in terms of process, you won't figure out how to map. It's really a problem. You need to think about what supports. If you try and drive a process in the map, you're going to get lost. And the other question about innovation, so I hope I answered partially this question. Innovation is something to create the conditions of. It's not necessarily something to tell you what to do, because then it's not innovation, it's known already. The maps give you that space of figuring out how do we go about those things, how do we go about this space. And equally, they also value the fact that industrializing and standardizing is important once you have found something that works. And it's not a given. So all those aspects are very important. Fortune, you have a question.
Yes, thank you so much. I really like this presentation. I think it's really helpful. I would say that in my experience, if I showed your final slide here to some executives, particularly on the business side, say a head of insurance, they're going to look at this, they're going to say, that's great. So now I've arranged the IT this way, but where's the business? Where am I in this value chain? And how does this help me actually make my strategy statement that I want to present to the board and to the public? So I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about that. Thank you.
It's a very good question. My answer is there is no business and no tech. They're all together everywhere. Fabrice, what's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, we're going back to, my IT is agile, but not my business. I was actually reminding someone or sharing the story of ING this morning. So I had this insider version, which is probably a bit romanced, of the ING transformation in 2009, I think-ish, 2010-ish, where they fired everyone. So they just fired everyone. And then they made them reapply to this new organization. So very, very brutal, not what, agile or lean would say. And in this new organization, they said, okay, now we're going to take all the people who know tech, put them in little squads of 2, 3, and then we're going to take 2, 3 more non-tech people and spread them across these teams. So basically, the idea of this new organization was there's no more business, there's no more tech, there's just squads of business and tech. And of course, one of the consequences of that, there were way too many business people, so half the business people were instantly jobless. Very, very brutal. Again, I'm not recommending it, but I'm sharing that that story because I think as an ideal of what it looks like to be very agile. Yes, the value stream is a mix of tech and business.
And the big game on that is you realize that a lot of organizations have a lot of roles that are here to brief somebody else in the organization. If you get them in collaboration, suddenly their role is to add value together. So it means recutting organization. It doesn't necessarily mean big OD type programs. because it's only about putting people in collaboration at the end of the day. It doesn't mean changing jobs and so on. So I hope it answered, and we are on time. So I just wanted to acknowledge and thank you, and then we take some time offline after to answer a couple of remaining questions. But just for finishing on time, thank you very much for attending today. We have two more, and thank you to Fabrice for joining us as well. We have two more meetups in this series. The Dandotsu one doesn't have so many people registered. It's going to be a fantastic one. I recommend, excellence and creating the collaboration, creating the culture of excellence is so essential in anything we do. I really recommend you attend that one on the 6th of December. So we look forward to having you for more of those. And there are more meetups as well going into the digital leadership. So for those I need to go, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Also, I have a hard stop, but I'm very looking forward to sharing this Dantotsu experience, which is really groundbreaking. The first time I shared it, I had amazing feedback. So you're more than welcome. And if you want to stay connected, by the way, on LinkedIn, I'm going to put my LinkedIn profile.
And thank you very much for being with us. Next time, we'll hear a lot more from you on the Dandotsu, and I'll be asking questions, I'm sure. So thank you for those that were with us. We're going to stop the recording now, and I am going to answer the next couple of questions.
Yeah.